Have you ever wondered where the problems in the world today would exist if we had deeper connection to ourselves, others, and the environment and acted from that place? Welcome to the Conscious Action Podcast with your host, Brian Berneman, who believe that connection is the key to taking conscious action as individuals and creating a better world. We are here to raise awareness and inspire meaningful action by sharing stories, knowledge, and conversations with thought leaders and change makers. From sustainability to well-being and everything related to conscious living, our mission is to empower you to be the change that you want to see in the world. Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Conscious Action Podcast. I am Brian Berneman, your host. And for this episode, I wanted to talk about cultivating empathy, cultivating compassion, cultivating unity in divisive times. Now, it has been my experience that we live in divisive times. We live in times that there's a lot of separation, that there's a lot of pointing fingers, that the way that our societies are structured in some ways, in our modern ways of civilizations, are divisive. Like a lot of places around the world, their system of politics, there's two main parties, or we have football clubs or sports clubs, and it's like we are for one and against another. And if you belong to one, you're fighting against the other. And then there's, unfortunately, wars and conflicts and a lot of things that create that divisiveness as well. And one of the things that I have realized through the years that, I was conditioned where I grew up to think that, anyone that was in a sense attacking me and my people, that they were wrong, that we were right and theirs are wrong. And what I have learned through the years as I got more of a realization on empathy for others, on compassion for myself and for others, unity and coming together with differences. That has been a key for me as an individual. And I think that that is one of the keys that we need more in the world, to be able to not judge what we don't know so easily, to not point fingers towards what we don't know so easily. We don't understand the motivations behind someone's actions. We don't know why someone would do a thing that we wouldn't do, because for us, perhaps something is immoral, unethical, or plain wrong. But someone else, perhaps that's not what they know. And until we can understand that we learned different things in different cultures, different countries, different ethnicities, different time periods as well, different life circumstances, the ones that we are privileged, perhaps we don't have the same conditions as someone that is surviving today. When we start to understand as well that we all have trauma, we all have energies of the things that came before, the mandates in a sense, and the patterns of behaviors and tendencies from our ancestors as well, and our families, all of that plays a role in why people behave in certain ways. And for me, the practices of putting myself in that place of cultivating empathy, cultivating compassion, cultivating that place of unity, as I mentioned, even with the differences. We are one. When we can understand that, we can build bridges. We can try to have conversations, understanding that we might have different points of views. And that doesn't mean that I'm right and you're wrong, or the other way around. Two things can be right at the same time. Then it's how do we actually live with that? How do we navigate differences? Can we navigate differences from a place of empathy, of understanding, of compassion? And one of the keys for me was understanding, how do I experience compassion for myself? Because what I realized was that if I don't know how compassion actually feels like, how can I be compassionate towards others? If I am not doing that towards myself, can I actually be that with others? I realized for me that the question there was, I needed to take the time to be kind and compassionate with myself, with what I have done before, with my actions, with my behaviors, with my thoughts, my energy, everything that I have done, and everything that I was still going to do, because I knew that I have my tendencies. As I work through my tendencies and my patterns of behaviors and I create changes in my life, I know that there's still going to be times where things are going to trigger something from the past. Even as I am changing, even as I become more and more aware, there's going to be things that are always going to trigger me until I can work fully on them. And as I developed a better relationship with myself, as I developed more kindness, more gentleness, compassion towards myself, I was able to feel it. This loving, compassionate, equanimous energy that allowed me to get a sense of how that feels and to understand that with my life, that I feel like I'm super privileged and I have been so fortunate with my life, with my family and a lot of my circumstances. If I can actually find that feeling, then I can actually do that for others. I realized through the years that we all have the capacity to feel what others are feeling, to actually go beyond just sympathy. We can actually empathize with one another, and we can even move to that place of compassion, where it's not only that we can put ourselves in someone else's shoes and think what it must be like, we can actually feel what it feels like. We can feel perhaps the suffering or the joy of someone else. And that can lead us to a very different approach on interactions, on how we approach each other. Because if we can actually feel what the other person is feeling and they might be suffering, we understand that their actions are coming from that place. And we can understand that a lot of times this fighting that takes place in this polarized world of separation and divisiveness, that a lot of times it comes from places of trauma, places of lack, places of fear, of the other, of the unknown, of different ways. When we can actually feel what others are feeling, not just what they are saying or doing, it can bring such a different perspective into how we approach those people and those circumstances. So I encourage you to see, are you able to take the time? Have you perhaps already done this to empathize with others, to cultivate compassion, to understand that place of unity, even with uniqueness, with differences? When we're able to get to that place, it's such a different life. I know it firsthand. So I encourage you, spend time with yourself if you haven't done that yet, and trying to see Where are the places that there's judgment within yourself, that you can bring that sense of compassion? Because whatever you're judging, there's something behind that perhaps you don't know, you haven't explored perhaps. But knowing that something is there can be perhaps less judgment. We can be kind with ourselves. We can be gentle with ourselves. When we do that, we can get an understanding of how that feels, so then we can extend that to others. Not from a place of pity, that is sympathy. From a place of actual empathetic, compassionate experience. I encourage you to do that for yourself and then with others. And see how in times like this that we're experiencing, whenever there's conflicts, both in our immediate experience or in the world, not to be so rushed in one direction or the other, not to judge so much one or the other, bringing compassion, bringing awareness, bringing that sense of unity, seeing how that is. Can that change your own experience as you navigate your days with whatever it is that is going on around you? I know for me it has. So I do encourage you to test it, play with it, be curious, spend time, and see which areas, whether that is internally or externally in your life, you can cultivate more awareness and more compassion so that we can actually see, does that make a difference in our life? I hope that you can be well during all of these things that are happening around the world. There's always something happening. We live in this world of polarity. So I hope that you do take the time to be kind with yourself, to be compassionate with yourself, and to do that with others. And that is how we can bring more of the change that we want to see in the world. Thank you for listening or watching. Thank you for sharing. Leave us a comment anywhere that you're finding this episode, if anything resonated, if there's anything more for this conversation to continue. And I will see you on the next episode. Bye!
What did you like the most about this episode? Take a moment to think about what change you can make in your life today.
Share your conscious action on social media using #ConsciousAction and tagging @ConsciousActionNZ so we can celebrate your impact on the world and create a ripple effect.
One easy action we would love for you to take right now is to share, like, and subscribe to this podcast. This will help us get these messages out into the world and inspire more people to take conscious action in their own lives, contributing to the better world we hope for.